And once again, Pakistan won the toss. Once again, Pakistan conceded 190 plus, and once again, Pakistan failed to chase it. Pakistan has lost the series 3-0. Welcome to the shiny side. I'm your host, Faris, and we have once again Saud Hashimi with us. How are you doing, Saud?
Good. Hello, everyone.
I guess, getting into things before we get into detail, what's the initial sentiment having seen today's game and the series overall? It seems a bit like Groundhog Day, right? Every match seems like it's the same match.
I mean, clearly, and I think every match keeps on pointing out the same weaknesses as well. So I think it's like very clear what the issues I think seem to be with the team. And obviously, when you compare us with New Zealand, certainly with them batting first, we can't compete, right?
Yeah.
So it makes me question why. ठीक है, होता है ना, कहते हैं ना, once ठीक है, गलती हो जाती है, twice, maybe you could like say whatever, three times, you sort of risk this because it was very clear what they were trying to do. So I think today's match, I was looking for something different.
Yeah.
So even from the toss, I was like, I just actually at that point, I felt we lost it right there. But anyway,
Yeah,
let's
so
get
I
past
guess
that and we come back.
let me quickly kick things off with a 33-second summary of the day. So Pakistan won the toss again. Uh, New Zealand were 29 for 1 in 4 overs, seemed fairly sedate, which is when Allen cut loose. Finn Allen scored 137 of 62, the star of the day.
Yeah.
He basically scored the highest score ever by a Kiwi in T20s. He's hit 16 sixes. They finished in 224 for 7. Essentially, by the time he was out, the game was done. Pakistan,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
response, at some point, were about 69 for 1 in 7 overs with Babar and his one at the crease. But other than Babar and a fucker, really no one looked like they would even be able to score any runs rapidly. And eventually we were bowled out for a change. We won 79 for 7. So that's the summary in about 37 seconds, so 4 seconds over. I guess going back to what you were talking about earlier at the toss, right? So before we look at what we did, we made a few changes. Pakistan had Zaman and Wasim coming in for Amir Jamal and for Bas Afridi,
Yeah.
who's looked good, but he apparently has pulled a muscle or something. And then we had Nawaz coming in for Osama. I thought all of those were positive changes. How did you see those changes at the toss?
I agree. I think, well, I mean, as positive as our bowling changes nowadays can be, because I think they're all sort of mediocre options with one or two exceptions on a good day. But as you know, I'm a fan of Nawaz in the sense that I do believe that he has always seems to contribute in some way, shape, or form, right, in a
Yeah.
match. So,
Yeah.
which he sort of did again today. So I like them. I like Wasim, always have. So I think they were good, but I think more than the changes, I think we needed to do something different, and I don't know why we didn't
Yeah,
outside of
so
the changes.
I guess, to be fair, even if we had won the first 2 games, I would have probably tried to bat because we are kind of building up to the World Cup, right? And you want to try out people in different roles, how your batsmen line up while they're setting up a score, how your bowlers respond when they're defending a score. And we didn't do that today, so can't seem to make sense of it.
I think you have to question the original strategy, right? So clearly, going into the first game, there's a plan and the plan says if we have a chance, we bowl first. Clearly, the plan that strategy felt strong enough that they said, "Nay, even though we got walloped, we'll do it again." And clearly, it was so strong the urge that they did it a third time. So let's first examine what the urge is to bowl first. Now, this is the part that I don't understand because, as you and I both know, that if you look at T20s, if you win the toss, unless there's some extenuating circumstances, what should you do, Faris? You should bat first, right? This is the way you should
I
play a
mean,
T20 because,
I will cut
yeah,
you off there because statistically,
yeah,
you slightly have a better chance of winning if you're chasing in
yeah.
T20 across the board there.
Yeah. But I think Dekho, in the sense, both of them we can get into a lot of things around sort of weak teams batting first against strong teams. So you can't look at those statistics without basically saying that they're biased by actually sort of, the actual toss decision. But
Yeah.
the point I'm trying to make to you is that I think when you win the toss and put the other team in, you're saying something about what you expect from your bowlers and what you expect from your batsmen, right? Now, typically, if you put the other team in to bat first, it basically means you're saying, "Okay, look, we think our bowlers should be able to hold them to a reasonable total, and I think we can chase that down." You
Yeah.
you clearly aren't putting them into bat first because you're thinking, "Oh, they're going to hit a lot of runs and we'll score a lot of runs to
Yeah.
chase them down." अब issue ये हुआ कि I don't think our bowling is good enough for
Yeah.
that. And you know, in T20, the minute you get past certain scores, it's even unfair on the batting side to evaluate the batsman because we were chasing like plus 200 scores. You have to go like haywire from the very get-go. So I think that, you know, वो बहुत ज़्यादा pressure हो जाता है. So as you said, you sort of lost the match, right?
I
Even before
mean,
you get to your
true.
batting. But I would have liked to have seen some variation, like you're saying, in the thought. I would have liked to have, you know, I always feel this idea of sort of batting first in T20s means there's a little bit less pressure on you. I think on both sides, you know, I think that unless you really are a good chasing team, you really have a decent bowling attack. I think batting first is a good thing to try and do. Because I clearly felt that how many games we weren't even in the game. I mean, the first game, we're pretty much done. Even in the second game, it was close because I think the score was somewhat more manageable, but the percentages still weren't in our favor, right? Let alone the batting unit. So the batting unit is such that I don't know how we expect to chase a high score.
Let me just quickly
But that's
get into New Zealand's changes also at the top. So they left Williamson out, by the way. They didn't feel it. And they had Seifert come in, who did a good job supporting Allen. Then they had Ferguson and Henry coming back in for Ben Sayers and Milner. So they clearly are also rotating their bowlers somewhat. I think the point you're making, right? So even if you put the toss aside for a second, if you look at the 3 matches so far, New Zealand average score batting first is 214. Pakistan, an average score is 280 while chasing. And these are grounds where the average score batting first is typically 180. So before we even dive in, I guess it's not, you have to say that if you had to pin the blame, and we love doing that because that's what we do, but like on one side, you probably say the bowling is more at fault than batting here, right? Because once you concede 214 on average, it doesn't matter where you're playing, you will lose most games.
Clearly. And I think, you know, across the board, I think we have just weakness, right? So even if the bowlers, Faris, had held New Zealand to 170, 180, right? I still think it's a stretch for us to beat New Zealand. And I think obviously if the bowlers have given up that many runs, like the minute you end up giving up those many runs against a pretty decent bowling attack, right? So bowling attack that's very professional, is very low chance you're going to get it there unless somebody plays an amazing innings.
I mean,
right?
we
So
have
that
got
didn't happen
about
for
180 in every innings, though. Like this time around, we're getting 180 in every innings.
Yeah.
I know we're chasing a very big score, but
yeah. So I think the chasing the big score gives a little bit more sort of change to the way the other team is playing. But look, I think even if you look at it, so we can talk about what we should have done better even on the batting side. So if you look at today, and if we talk about the game from today itself.
Sorry, if I can start, can we just finish up on the bowling first? So let's just quickly talk about the bowling innings. So I think we have to talk about Haris Rauf. So I know he went for a lot of runs, but what's most bizarre is in his first over, he took a wicket for 2 runs. In his last over, he only gave 8 runs, but in the middle, he gave 51 runs in 2 overs. What do you have to say about his bowling today? I mean, I think everyone's seen what the sixes look like, right? But how do you summarize?
You know, Haris Rauf is an interesting problem. So I think he's a person who does specific things, right? So you say, okay, do this particular thing this way well, and he can probably deliver. So that's why I think his closing overs are always, you know, like interesting overs to look towards because there's always something good he does. My issue with him is that I think that he doesn't seem to either have much of the plan that he bowls to, if there is a plan that he bowls to, right, doesn't bowl to his strengths. So I have this weird sort of issue where I think we're trying to like bowl in a very specific way. Maybe the way we're bowling doesn't work. You know, I think we end up being very strangely short. I mean, Haris Rauf's like main thing he should be doing the whole time is going, you know, is over pitching always. I mean, he's shown that he's a really good bowler when he starts to bowl full. So I think maybe what's happening is that we have like a plan and we're trying to get this guy to execute a plan that's not good for him. Right?
I mean,
as opposed to playing to his strengths.
If you
and
can
that's the
break
best
it,
I can say for him because I like the fella, but I mean, seriously, giving away so many runs so frequently doesn't make you feel comfortable having him in the side because just the runs that he's giving away essentially loses you the match, right? So those 20 runs extra that he might have given away that another tighter bowler didn't give away would have made the score manageable, perhaps, in one of these games.
But you know, if you look at him again, if you look at break down his stats a little bit, right? In the power play, he goes for a lot of runs. at the death, he does not, right? And the later you bowl him, the better it is. So while you can't really excuse going for 250 in 2 overs, he was Imran on the show last time spoke about how we should use him in an Omar Gul manner, where you bring him on in the first over and the 12th over. Today,
Yeah.
he was done with 3 overs by the 10th time the 11th over came around. So it's also not the best use of his skill, like you said, right? Because I think you're much better off backloading him.
I mean, and it should be obvious to anybody, right? So why Haris Rauf doesn't bowl most of his overs at the end is beyond me, right? I think that, he for some reason has a good sense of what he has to do and control. I think in the early overs, he struggles to understand how to do what he has to do,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So he alternates between getting them out and I think trying to bowl to his field. And for some reason, it just doesn't seem to work. So
Yeah.
I fully agree with you. But I think part of the issue is that all of our bowlers, I mean, I don't think there was any bowler that actually bowls well to his or her, his strengths and then also on plan. So
Yeah.
clearly today, the bowling was mediocre. It was wide, it was short, it was playing into, I mean, by the way, he's in great touch, right? That besides the point. Besides the point that he basically hammered our bowling because he's in great touch. But if you saw the balls he hammered, they were wide, they were short, or wonderfully
Yeah.
there to be hit. So
I
I think
think
the bowling just has looked very loose. Loose is maybe the best word for it. It just looked loose.
I mean, I think Zaman and Wasim were playing the first game. I feel like if you can call anybody, Wasim was probably the pick of the bowlers. You saw him try different things. Some of them came off. He was also a bit unlucky with a couple of edges that went for 4. But talking about Finn Allen, now, if you remember the World T20 where we beat them in New Zealand in the semi-final, he scored 95 runs in 5 innings. In the next 5 innings he played last season, he only survived for 20 balls once. And he's been averaging 16 in the last 13 innings before the series. But New Zealand have persisted with him, because on the domestic circuit in the 100 and that domestic T20 smash, he's been very prolific there. And also they understand that if you are playing that high-risk game, you will not always come off. And I guess a lot of people on WhatsApp and Twitter have been chatting about had he been playing for Pakistan, he would have been dropped maybe 2 years ago and never seen again. How do you see Finn Allen and the role he's suddenly playing in this series for New Zealand?
Yeah, Dekho, I think it's a very clear strategy, right? And we talked about this. Dekho, T20 has got a little bit of an element of roulette in it. Right now, you can load your gun with as many, if you can load your gun with like more than one or two like game-changing power hitters, it's great because they won't come off every game. In fact, they'll come off maybe 1 in 3 or 4 games. So I think the model, when you see this in the way New Zealand is batting, is we have 3 people, maybe 4, but 3 people certainly in our lineup that on their day, in their whatever, faced with bowling that fits with their sort of strengths or whatever it is, can really have a go and score a 200 run, key strike rate. And this is, I think, the modern game, right? So I think they're like, it's okay. The main thing they're probably looking at is how many innings it takes him, right, to actually get that big. Because every time he does it, there's a chance they're gonna win, right? So he's a game changer. And I think the same with a couple of the other players. Conway is the same. I think a couple of the other players in the same sort of boat. Our problem is that Babar is not a game changer. He's just a master batsman in the middle. He needs the game changers around him. Rizwan is the Rizwan and Uncle are the Chacha are the only two
but I
game
think
changers
that's where someone like, I mean, this conversation came up because people were like, Saim has failed now, drop him. And my thing is, if you're playing him and you have Babar and Rizwan at 2 and 3, I think it's the ideal foil for Saim. So have someone at Saim, give him the next 10 games and have Babar and Rizwan at 2 and 3.
Right. Yeah, Dekho, the way people are looking at this is in a very, it's not the way to look at people, right? So if you reduce people simply to averages and scores in the last few innings, you've glossed over all the actual stuff. Now, what you should really be looking at is how he got out, what shots he played before he got out, his power capability, right? So I think there's a lot more to this. And I think with all due respect to the people who have these conversations, I think this is where they're not actually working like analysts. They're just doing armchair quarterback stuff. Right? Because it's not the way to look. So let's look at our players and let's look at how they got out. That's actually perhaps the best judge. Rizwan got out on a great ball. Otherwise, Rizwan was, as Rizwan is, solid. I love the guy. I love the guy. I think he's amazing, right? I think Babar is exactly Babar. When he's on form, this is what he gives you, right? He's never going to give you
In
200 strike.
fact,
He just can't do it.
I
This
think
is what
what
he's
the
going to
one the
do.
one thing I feel like Babar has actually improved in his game. Now the issue people have with playing anchors in T20s is not that when they score 50 balls, they probably finish a decent strike rate anyway, but sometimes they start slow. But this time around, what's been a clear change is Babar is starting very rapidly. He was 9 or 4
Yeah, I
balls.
love him.
So even if the problem
Absolutely.
with anchors is if they get out in 15 balls and they've only scored 8, they can set you back. But if you're starting fast, then you're kind of eliminating that issue as well.
And so I think I really liked his new game, as it were, right? So he's lost that, I come in and I stay in because he said, okay, TK, let me play, which I think is the treat that you saw this with New Zealand. It didn't matter. They just really tried to play hard, regardless, right, of what was happening. I think our problem is that around those two, right, other people aren't standing up. And between Fakhar, who's been around for a long time, Chacha, who's been around for a long time, people like Nawaz, who have been around, and Azam, who, unfortunate for the guy, he's got such a spotlight on him. It's a big spotlight. He's a big guy, but he's got a big spotlight on him. And I think that this is our answer to having 3 or 4 power hitters in the lineup. So our answer to New Zealand's power hitting is basically a combination of these 4 guys. Now, Chacha on his day is awesome, but he seems really out of sorts because he ran himself out today. I mean, it was his score. What is he doing making that run at his age and with his understanding of the game, right? If you look at the others, Fakhar is Fakhar, right? So he is one of those guys who
again,
once every 4 innings.
So I feel like that's a pretty good combination, right? So Fakhar at 4, Saim at 1 in between Babar and Rizwan, I feel like is a brilliant top 4.
I don't
hope it
mind. I
comes
think
off.
this is a solid thing. I think this is solid. I think our problem is, as we've said with our T20, is the lack of power, because inevitably our scores are 20, 30 less than other teams that we consider in our thing. And so the power is not coming. The power is, if the people we're putting in to deliver the power think their role is to just come in and hit the crap out of the ball and they get out.
But that's the other thing, right? If I can just cut you off there, if you look at today's innings, if you keep Fakhar and Babar aside, Rizwan, Saim, Ifti, and Azam include supposedly 3 of the power hitters in your words, right? They scored 45 or 44 balls. So they were just scoring at a run a ball. And when you're chasing 220 plus, if 4-5 guys combine to take up 45 balls, more than a third of the innings, and only score run a ball, you're not going to make it no matter what the other guys do. Babar finished at a 160 strike rate. And Fakhar was, again, he got out short, but he scored 20 off 11. So he was doing his job while he was there.
Yeah. So look, the only people who sort of did their jobs the way they probably should be doing were Babar, Fakhar, and Rizwan, right? Rizwan underscored. Fakhar is sort of nicely always near his average Ajkal, which is not a bad thing. It's 28.
And even Nawaz with the bat, by the way, at number 7 or 8. He did this.
I always like him with the bat. Look, so I don't think these should be your guys in your T20 team, one way or the other. These guys should stay. I've seen enough of Sayam to say he's pretty good. He just needs to basically be told, "Ki yaar, play smart." That he got out on a really, really in a really bad way, right? You can't see too many of these outs and say, "Okay, kid, you got it," because if he doesn't learn how to not get out of this sort of stuff, then he ain't got it. So he needs to stop. He needs to learn, but he's solid. I like him. And then I think I've always respected Chacha. I actually think he's a good player. I always think he's solid, but he needs to stop being in this role where he sort of sees this weird sort of red all the time. He does stupid stuff now. He hits the wrong ball. He gets out on runouts which are not runs. I mean, I don't get
also,
it.
he's a slow starter against spin. If the T20 World Cup, which we lost the final to England in, he played a maiden to Adil Rashid in the 15th over or something, which in my view was criminal because he only eventually didn't lose by too many, right? So an 8-run over there could have been a difference.
And he can't deal with it.
Yeah, he can't do that first.
And he can't deal with it.
Yeah.
But this also brings up this other issue, which I think you're not, we talk about, but I think it's really, really relevant, is that we don't actually, our strategy in these matches is not dynamic, and neither is it sort of, playing to our strength. So the simple fact is our lineup, for example, like you are saying, should actually be moving around based on who's bowling, right? And based on who's likely to bowl. I really do think it matters to us, right? Because as you said, Chacha at the wrong time is a disaster. Honestly speaking, as you said, because he's not good at playing certain types of bowlers.
And he didn't come off, but Azam Khan is strong against spin. Yeah. He didn't come off, but he should come in when spinners are there. That's what his strength is.
It's like Haris Rauf. So what I would do with Haris Rauf is literally if you get a wicket, right, I would put Haris Rauf in for 1 over in the first, whatever, and that's it. to see if he can get the guy who's just coming out,
Yeah.
because he's good with the new guys. There's a certain strangeness to his delivery style, stride, skinniness to his ball that is actually difficult to adjust to in
Yeah.
first off. And then I would save the rest of his overs for the whatever. But this is strategic, right? So you have to be thinking this on an ongoing basis. And I
But that's the
didn't
thing.
see this.
That's the thing, right? So the criticism of Babar was कि जी वो printed plan आता है उसी पे चलता है. It clearly seems like Shaheen is also doing the same thing, right? He's even less dynamic than Babar was. I know it's only been 3 games to be fair, but we haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's not a captain's. I don't think it's the captain's fault when you have coaching staff that think that they are head and shoulders above in terms of being wise. I think, clearly there's a significant amount of direction that's coming from the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And I think this is perhaps so. Well, then you have to make a choice. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to it. There's just a choice, and then you got to stick to it, because this like halfway, sort of here, sort of there, sort of not really, doesn't work.
Yeah.
You got to commit. So I think if you want to commit, you got to commit to, like, if your captain is meant to be strong, let him make the call, right? Give him a chance, let him make these calls, let him figure out his strategy, let him go make the call on the choice, have everyone else as advisors. If you want another model, let the coach make the call and have the captain be the guy who's just managing the guys on the field. Fine. But let's be clear. Let's actually not treat this as like some sort of black box that who knows how they're making the choice. All we know, they ran into each other in the elevator and said, "अच्छा हाँ मैं सोचा था." वो कहते हाँ कर लो बैठ या हाँ कर ही लेते. I mean, this is not right. If that's the way it happened, I don't know.
So I guess we still have 2 games to go. They're both at the Hagley Oval. Hagley Oval is where the tri-series happened a couple of years ago, which Pakistan, New Zealand, and Bangladesh played, which we won. If you look at the ground there's 66% success for teams chasing. The average score batting first is 162. The highest chase anyone's done is actually Pakistan against Bangladesh, it was 175. So clearly seems like a relatively low scoring ground from a New Zealand standard. And we actually have an 80% success rate there thanks to that Champions Trophy we played there. Sorry, that tri-series. Given all of that, Saud, I'm just going to put up the 11 which we went with today. What changes do you feel Pakistan should make or will make for the next game? What would you like to see?
So first of all, regardless of the statistics, if we won the toss, I would bat first.
Sure.
Yeah, because we've now lost in a horrible way with them batting first, and I think that you need to have some change, because otherwise you really lost the battle in your mind. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing on this, look, I don't think we should change. To be honest with you, I don't think we should change the team. I think we should give this team another game. I think everyone from who came in to replace the guys did good enough today that it deserves another chance. I think the only unfortunate in all of this conversation is Azam, because for whatever
I was going to say
reason,
that's the only question, right? Do you give him one more game or is he done?
No, because उस बेचारे पर बहुत ज़्यादा focus हो गया है, rightly or wrongly, and so every time he goes out there, he's under this tremendous stress to deliver. And when he strikes that ball, the way he strikes it, by the way, I've never seen anybody actually strike it when he gets it right. You like, wow, man. But then obviously he tries to do that all the time, and he is limited. He is limited in his range of motion. It's clear to see when he's batting out there. If I was an opponent, I'd be bowling a faster bowler at him. I'd be varying my length line and get him out. Which is exactly what happens. This is what they're doing, and every time he's getting out. So
he's got the third best. He's got the third best strike rate against Spain in T20s across the world in the last 2 years.
Yeah, but that's
but having said that, everybody brings on. It's a very different game when you bowl facing 140 kph or higher, right? It's a very different game.
Yeah, मैं कह रहा हूँ ना, and that's what's happening because they're varying their pace. If you look at how he gets out, he's teeing off the faster ball and he's getting off on the slower one.
So we're on selection mode now. Would you play him? Would you drop him?
No, yeah, I would play him. I think you already lost the series. Poor chap, if you drop him now, I don't know when he gets the chance again. Let him ride. Let him ride for the next two. For the next two T20s, let him show what he's about. At least हम कह तो सकते हैं ना उसके बाद कि यार आजम तुझे पास T20 दिए थे भाई, अब तो बढ़िया यार.
I mean, to be honest, if you look at the guys on the right, Abbas is injured. I'm happy not seeing Osama and Amir Jamal again in the series.
There's not much choice in that way, right?
I mean, Hasibullah Khan is a bit of a Hasibullah Khan is, by the way, a keeper who's a pretty aggressive batsman, plays for Karachi Kings, but he probably will get an opportunity in the PSL to show what he's about. But
देखो,
yeah,
बेचारे आजम के लिए I think it's the bad call to drop
yeah,
him. It's
yeah,
really like at the worst time to drop a guy like this. And because, by the way, now that and by the way, this is one of the reasons I want us to bat first. देखो, batting second requires a level of professionalism and how you manage your batting,
yeah,
right? Because you are chasing. Now, when the other team is scoring a lot, for some of these kids, their ability to modulate their striking on the quality of the balls isn't there. So they're playing bad shots to good balls, and that's why they're getting out. I think batting first, there's probably a little bit less of that stress कि you know कि यार इतने सारे runs उन्होंने बनाए थे 10 के रन की ओवर से हमें जाना जरूरी है. So I think maybe we should, if we can, I would love to see a bat first. I'd love to see these guys. You know, I'd love to see Saib. I'd love to see Azam actually score because I know they can. It would
yeah.
be awesome to see. You know, and then I'd like to see if our bowling can actually defend 200. Let's see if our bowling can
Or,
defend
or,
that because
or,
I'm
or,
not sure. I'm
or
not sure even if
180,
we
or
score from
180 for that matter,
25,
right?
they'll defend it.
Or
Huh?
180 for them, or 180 for that matter, right?
Well, well, look, I know you're saying that the ground historically has played low in terms of its totals and numbers and stuff, right? Let's see. Let's see sort of like how it turns out. If it
Yeah.
is the way you're saying, I think that, you know, as you said, that let's just pare down the numbers. But
I
again,
mean, even
I'd
otherwise,
like to
right? I
see
feel
us
like
both.
once you have that score on the board, I feel like teams take it differently, right? So, like your whole point about chasing, right? If you're chasing, even if you're New Zealand, if you're chasing
Yeah.
180, you'll approach it in a different manner, you take certain risks and so on and so forth. And I mean, creates
Maybe. And
opportunities.
even for us, our bowlers have, so I think when you have targets like this for bowlers, it might be easier for our
Yeah,
type of bowlers.
yeah,
When you have like when you're batting without a target or without a run rate that you're chasing per over, I think it might be better for our
yeah,
types of
yeah.
batsmen because we don't have, we're sort of not well refined in
True,
our
true.
in our play, right? So
So,
I think it's a totally different thing. For example, if you are Australia or England or India, right? You are fine-tuned into the situation because depending on the conditions and depending on the pitch, you already know how to tune yourself if you're batting first or
yeah,
batting
yeah,
second, right? Bowling first, bowling second, you have different strengths, you have different weaknesses. All of that is in play. I mean, if you look at how they rotate their people, especially India now, my God, they're doing amazing job,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
They're specifically targeting conditions, playing people in. Everyone knows their role. Everyone's playing it
yeah,
to a specific. I think is what is
yeah.
fabulous. You know,
Okay, so looking at New Zealand's 11 quickly,
grudging
don't
respect to their
expect,
professionalism.
yeah, don't expect too
You
many
know,
changes there. Will Young has just come in as a backup batsman. Clarkson hasn't played yet. He's an all-rounder.
yeah.
Milne has been rested, so he may come in for one of the quicks. Maybe they rest Saudi. But otherwise, expect them to go with the same team. Before we close off, by the way, those of you watching,
I
if you
don't know.
have a view
I think they might
on
give
what
the
team we
guys a
should go with,
chance.
please leave a comment and tell us what 11 you think Pakistan should go with, or New Zealand for that matter. But Sal, before we finish up, what's your prediction for the next two games?
I think we're going to lose unless New Zealand play like subs for some of these guys. But I think we're going to lose because I don't think we have the firepower. I'm hoping that somebody plays a hugely awesome innings, but that's like a low probability event, right? The very clearly the probabilities would say that 70-80% chances New Zealand is beating us in the next two as
So
well.
your call
Let's
is
hope.
5-0.
My call is 5-0. My
I
call, I think, on the series was like Australia. It was always going to be total whitewash.
Interesting.
You know,
I will go
you
with
never know.
4-1. There's still more hope on this side of the screen. But for those of you watching, once again, please like the video, subscribe to the
Percentages are
channel.
percentages.
Yes. And
Anything can
Sal, thank you
happen,
for being
folks.
on.
Not at all, my friend.
And
Let's hope it's 4-1. Let's hope it's 3-2. Let's
who
actually
knows? It
hope
could be
it's
anything.
3-2,
Could be
right? As
anything.
fans.
But again, thank you for being on the show. And those of you watching, we'll be back after the fourth T20 on Friday. In the meantime, stay tuned to the shiny side.